It started with a heavy knock at 7 in the morning. When Sarah opened her front door, she did not find a neighbor, but a code enforcement team backed by local police. Within minutes, her meticulously tended garden was being razed to the ground. They did not call it food. They called it a nuisance. They did not see a harvest. They saw an illegal infestation of noxious weeds. By noon, her life-saving crop was confiscated and hauled to a landfill, leaving behind a barren patch of dirt and a $3,000 fine. This was not a drug bust or a crime scene investigation. This was a government-sanctioned raid on a backyard garden. It makes you wonder, why is the state spending your tax dollars to destroy a plant that could literally end world hunger? What are they so afraid of? The truth is being systematically censored because this plant represents the ultimate threat to their control. Right now, there is literal green gold growing in your own yard, disguised as a common weed. You have walked past it, mowed over it, and ignored it for years. But once you see what they are hiding, you will understand we live in the age of the supermarket, a place where the bright lights and overflowing shelves create a comforting illusion of infinite abundance. When you walk down the cereal aisle, you see hundreds of different brands, colorful boxes, and competing claims of health and vitality. But this is a carefully manufactured mirage. Behind the vibrant packaging lies a staggering reality. Just 4 massive corporations control over 90% of the global grain trade. This is not a competitive marketplace. It is a fragile monopoly disguised as freedom of choice. While you think you are choosing between different products, you are actually just choosing which subsidiary of a global conglomerate receives your money. This centralization is the ultimate bottleneck, and it has created a terrifyingly thin line between civilization and total chaos. Most people do not realize that the modern grocery store is only 72 hours away from being completely empty. If the trucks stop moving for just 3 days, the shelves will be bare, and the social contract will vanish. Yet, instead of encouraging citizens to build their own local resilience, the government actively works to discourage unregulated food sources. They use the language of safety and sanitation to pass laws that make it nearly impossible for a small farmer or a backyard gardener to provide for their community. They want you dependent on the industrial machine because dependency is the most effective form of control ever devised. By branding the most resilient, nutrient-dense plants as weeds or hazards, they ensure that your only source of survival is a barcode and a plastic card. They have commodified your survival and criminalized your independence. But why would they go to such lengths to suppress a simple plant? To understand that, we have to look closer at what they are actually trying to keep out of your kitchen. The secret is not just in the hunger it solves, but in the power it restores to the individual. We are being steered toward a man-made scarcity that hides a natural wealth. This is the calculated engineering of collective vulnerability. Imagine a crop that does not care about the weather. It does not need expensive synthetic fertilizers made in a factory overseas. It does not need toxic pesticides to keep bugs away because it has evolved to be tougher than any predator. It can grow in the cracks of a sidewalk, in the middle of a scorched parking lot, or in the poorest, most depleted soil imaginable. While the wheat fields of the Midwest wither under the slightest heat wave and the corn crops fail without massive irrigation, this plant remains vibrant, green, and heavy with nutrition. It is, for all intents and purposes, invincible. For decades, you have been taught to hate this plant. You have been told it is a nuisance, an eyesore, and a competitor to your lawn. But the truth is far more provocative. This plant is the ultimate threat to the industrial agricultural complex because it cannot be patented, it cannot be controlled, and it refuses to die. I am talking about Amaranth and its hardy relatives like lamb's quarters and purslane. To the uninformed eye, these are just weeds. To the survivor, they are the backbone of a hidden food system. Amaranth produces thousands of tiny, protein-dense seeds that can be ground into flour or popped like miniature corn. Its leaves are more nutritious than spinach and can be harvested all summer long. Once you recognize the distinct shape of this leaf and the jagged edges of its cousins, your entire perspective on the world will shift. You will stop seeing a vacant lot as a wasteland and start seeing it as a free grocery store. This is the gold that the government does not want you to mine. They want you focused on fragile, high-maintenance crops that require you to buy something every step of the way. They want you buying seeds, buying soil amendments, and buying protection. Amaranth requires none of that. It is a self-seeding, drought-resistant powerhouse that provides high-quality protein, fiber, and essential minerals for absolutely zero cost. This invincibility is exactly why the industrial machine wants it gone. A population that can feed itself from the edges of the road is a population that cannot be easily coerced. The system thrives on your need, but this plant offers you abundance. It is nature's way of ensuring we never truly go hungry, provided we have the eyes to see what is right in front of us. If you knew that your backyard was currently producing a superfood more powerful than anything in the organic aisle, would you still feel the same level of anxiety about the future? The answer is growing right at your feet. Believe. We are taught from a young age that our health depends on the produce we find in the supermarket. We are told to fill our carts with vibrant kale, crisp spinach, and heads of lettuce to get the vitamins our bodies crave. But there is a massive deception at play in the produce department. Most of what they sell you is nothing more than nutrient-depleted biomass. Take iceberg lettuce, for example. It is effectively crunchy water, grown in exhausted soil and transported thousands of miles before it reaches your plate. This isn't just an accident. It's a feature of the system. Now, contrast that with the so-called weeds the government wants you to spray with poison. While you are paying premium prices for weakened vegetables, you are being told to apply chemical herbicides like Roundup to a genuine nutritional powerhouse. This is not just a difference in flavor. It is a difference in survival. If we look at the data, the comparison becomes staggering. Let's talk about calcium. We are conditioned to believe that dairy is the only reliable source. Yet a single serving of lamb's quarters contains 3 times more calcium than a glass of milk. While wheat and corn are the foundation of the modern diet, they are notoriously low in protein and lack essential amino acids. Amaranth, however, is a complete protein, containing lysine and methionine and essential building blocks that are almost entirely absent from other grains. It is a biological miracle that grows for free in your driveway. Furthermore, consider purslane. While the industrial system tries to sell you expensive fish oil supplements, this tiny succulent contains more heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids than any other leafy green on the planet. It is nature's multivitamin, delivered without a prescription or a grocery bill. A tragedy. The irony is thick enough to choke on. The system spends billions of dollars fortifying processed cereals with synthetic vitamins because the base grain is nutritionally bankrupt. Meanwhile, they characterize the most nutrient-dense plants on Earth as invasive threats. They want you focused on the USDA food pyramid, a chart designed by lobbyists to move commodities, rather than the wild abundance that could make you biologically independent. When you eat these forbidden crops, you aren't just filling your stomach. You are repairing your cells with minerals that haven't been seen in commercial soil for decades. You are reclaiming a level of vitality that the modern world has forgotten. But the question remains, why would any authority want to keep this level of health away from the public? The answer lies in the dark intersection of profit and control, where a healthy population is much harder to manage than a sick one. It is a strange and unsettling reality when the law of the land comes into direct conflict with the laws of nature. We are told that regulations exist to keep us safe, yet when we look at the specific history of noxious weed acts, a different story emerges. Why is a plant that provided sustenance for thousands of years suddenly labeled as a threat to the community? The answer is not found in biology, but in the ledgers of multi-billion-dollar corporations. These seed giants, like Monsanto and Bayer, have built their empires on the concept of intellectual property. They do not just sell seeds. They own the genetic code of the food we eat. This creates a fundamental problem for them. How can you sell a patented, genetically modified grain to a farmer if a superior, more resilient version is growing for free on the side of the road? The solution was simple and brutal. Use the power of the state to criminalize the competition. By lobbying for aggressive weed control laws, these corporations ensured that any plant they couldn't own or control was legally classified as an enemy. This suppression goes beyond the legal books. It has been woven into the very fabric of our social expectations. This is the weaponization of aesthetics. For decades, we have been conditioned to believe that a flat monoculture of green grass is the only acceptable way to manage a piece of land. We are taught that a manicured lawn is a sign of a good citizen, while a yard full of diverse, edible plants is a sign of neglect. This social engineering turns your own neighbors into unwitting enforcers for the industrial food system. When someone sees a tall stand of amaranth or a thick patch of lamb's quarters, they don't see a harvest. They see a violation of the local ordinance. They call code enforcement because they have been trained to fear anything that looks wild or unmanaged. This creates a system of total surveillance and control where the act of feeding your family for free becomes a social taboo. They want you to feel shame for having a productive yard because shame keeps people in line. It is a calculated move to ensure that every calorie you consume is tracked, taxed, and processed through their infrastructure. They don't want you to have a relationship with the earth that doesn't involve a transaction. This is the ultimate us versus them narrative. On one side is a centralized power structure that demands dependence. On the other is quiet resilience of a plant that refuses to be tamed. This is about who owns your survival. To break free, we must understand history. Long before the era of modern supermarkets and government regulations, there was a grain that built empires and fueled legends. To understand why this plant is being targeted today, we must look back 500 years to the high plateaus of Mexico. The Aztecs did not just grow amaranth. They revered it. They called it Huatli, and it was the cornerstone of their entire civilization. It provided more than just physical sustenance. It was a sacred bridge between the people and their gods. During great festivals, they would mix the tiny red seeds with honey to form large, edible statues of their deities. It gave their warriors a level of endurance that terrified those who sought to conquer them. But when the Spanish conquistadors arrived, they didn't just see a nutritious crop. They saw a source of spiritual and physical independence that they could not control. Hernán Cortés and his men recognized that to break the Aztec spirit, they had to strike at the source of their strength. They launched the first true scorched earth campaign against a vegetable. The cultivation of amaranth was banned under the penalty of death. The fields were put to the torch, and the granaries were emptied into the dust. The Spanish understood a fundamental truth of power. A population that can find its dinner in a wild, unpatented plant is a population that will never truly bow to an external master. By criminalizing the crop, they forced the survivors into a state of total dependence on European grains like wheat and barley. This was not about agriculture. It was about the systematic erasure of self-sufficiency. For nearly 5 centuries, amaranth was forced into the shadows, surviving only in the most remote mountain villages where the reach of the empire could not penetrate. This historical suppression is the direct ancestor of the modern garden ordinances we face today. The tactics have changed, but the objective remains exactly the same. They want to sever your connection to the ancient wisdom of the earth. They want you to believe that food only comes from a supply chain and that nutrition only comes from a lab. But history shows us that truth cannot be buried forever. The seeds that were once burned by conquistadors are the same seeds currently sprouting through the cracks in your driveway. They are a living legacy of resistance. Nature's resilient abundance endures. Now that you know why they want it gone, it is time to discuss how we bring it back. This is where we stop being observers and start being participants in the quiet revolution of guerrilla gardening. If the system demands your dependence, the most radical thing you can do is plant a seed they haven't authorized. But we must be smart. We must learn the art of stealth. First, you must develop the eyes of a gatherer. Amaranth and lamb's quarters are masters of disguise. Look for the characteristic goosefoot shape of the lamb's quarters leaf, often dusted with a fine silvery powder on the underside. Observe the vibrant, feathery plumes of amaranth that can reach high into the sky. Once you identify these in the wild, you have found your source of life. But how do you grow this in a neighborhood where gardens are restricted? The answer is intercropping and camouflage. Amaranth comes in stunning varieties of deep burgundy and neon green. To an untrained code enforcement officer, these look like expensive, exotic ornamental flowers. Plant them in the center of your flower beds, surrounded by marigolds. They will see a beautiful landscape. You will see a high-protein harvest. Purslane, with its thick leaves and tiny yellow flowers, makes an excellent ground cover. It thrives in the heat and requires almost no water, making it the perfect low-profile crop for a balcony or a hidden corner. When the season ends, the real work of the resistance begins. Seed saving. As the amaranth plumes turn dry and brittle, hold a bucket underneath and rub the flower head. You will be rewarded with a rain of thousands of tiny seeds. A single plant can yield over 100,000 seeds. This is your private seed bank. Winnow away the chaff and store the seeds in a cool, dark place. By doing this, you transition from a consumer to a producer. You are no longer a victim of a fragile supply chain. You are the architect of your own resilience. This is about reclaiming the sovereignty stolen from our ancestors. Every seed you save and every hidden row you plant is a vote for a future where we are no longer beholden to the grocery store monopoly. We are growing a movement, one hidden garden at a time. This path of defiance, however, does come with certain legal risks we must navigate carefully. It is crucial to understand the boundaries of the law while pushing for our natural rights. You are now an active part of this quiet struggle. Never underestimate the power of a single seed in the palm of your hand. It is your ultimate hidden biological weapon. Navigating the legal landscape of food independence feels like walking through a minefield where the rules are designed to trip you up. While the Constitution might protect your right to life and liberty, your local city council has a very different opinion on what you can do with your front yard. In many jurisdictions, the very plants we have discussed are classified under broad, sweeping noxious weed acts. These laws were often written at the behest of industrial agricultural lobbies to prevent the spread of plants that compete with their commercial monocultures. If you are caught growing them openly, you could face escalating fines, property liens, or even the forced removal of your entire garden. This is why discretion is your greatest ally in this struggle for sovereignty. However, there are ways to fight back using their own bureaucracy against them. Many states have enacted right-to-farm acts that provide some level of protection for home food production, but you must know how to frame your activities. Never call your amaranth a crop. Call it a decorative floral arrangement. Never refer to your purslane as food. Call it a drought-tolerant ground cover. By using the language of landscaping and pollinator habitats, you create a legal shield that is much harder for code enforcement to penetrate. They are trained to look for vegetable gardens, not complex, edible ecosystems. The window to secure your space is narrowing as more cities move toward restrictive smart city models that prioritize centralized control over individual resilience. You must act now while these legal gray areas still exist. Secure your seeds, learn the local ordinances, and start building your hidden pantry today. This isn't just about gardening anymore. It is about navigating a system that considers your self-sufficiency a threat. Be smart, be discreet, survivors. You might feel like you are standing alone in the struggle, but you are actually part of a growing global network of people who have already seen the miraculous results of reclaiming these forbidden crops. Take the story of Mark, a father from the Rust Belt who lost his job during the height of the supply chain collapses. With empty shelves at his local market and no income, he turned to the forgotten edges of his property. He stopped mowing and started identifying. He found that the very weeds he had been trying to kill for years were actually enough to supplement his family's meals for an entire summer. By grinding wild amaranth into flour, he kept his children fed and healthy while the world around him panicked. Then there is the community in a crowded urban center that transformed a vacant, trash-strewn lot into a lush, edible forest. When the city tried to shut them down, the neighbors stood together, proving that the nutritional value coming out of that soil was more important than a tidy appearance. These aren't just isolated incidents. They are the front lines of the resistance. We want to hear your stories too. Have you ever harvested something from your yard that most people would call a weed? Have you successfully bypassed the grocery store by learning the secrets of the earth? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your knowledge might be the spark someone else needs to start their own journey toward independence. The information we have shared today is more than just a gardening lesson. It is a blueprint for survival in an increasingly uncertain world. Do not wait for the next crisis to realize how vulnerable the current food system truly is. You must take action now before the window of opportunity closes and these resilient seeds become even harder to find. Start by downloading our comprehensive seed identification guide, linked in the description. so you can begin surveying your own land for these hidden treasures today. If this message resonates with you, I urge you to subscribe to this channel and join our growing community of food rebels who are choosing independence over dependency. Do not let them control your plate or your future. Share this video with at least one person you trust who needs to hear this truth. The more people who know how to harvest the abundance of the earth, the less power the centralized monopolies have over us. Your journey to food independence starts with a single step. Join the resistance today. Freedom is yours. You now possess the ancient keys to a life of independence and total resilience. The system thrives on your fear, but nature offers you a path to absolute freedom. The seeds of the quiet revolution are already in the ground beneath your feet. It is time to stop waiting and start claiming your bountiful harvest.